The temple of Athena stood atop the highest hill on the island of Seriphos, its marble columns gleaming like bones under the midday sun. The air was thick with the scent of olive trees and salt from the nearby sea, and the distant cries of gulls echoed like whispers of the gods. It was a place of peace, of reverence, and of secrets. I was Medusa, a priestess of Athena, though I was not born to this life. Once I had been a girl of the village, weaving baskets and dreaming of the sea. But the gods had other plans for me. When I was 12, Athena herself appeared to me in a dream, her gray eyes piercing the veil of my slumber. She spoke no words, but her gaze was a command, and I knew my destiny was no longer my own. For years I served her faithfully, tending to the temple, offering prayers, and interpreting the will of the goddess for the people of Seriphos. They called me wise, though I was young, and kind, though I was stern. I wore my devotion like a cloak, and it shielded me from the world's cruelties. But the gods are fickle, and their favor is a fragile thing. It began on a day like any other. The sun was high, and the temple courtyard was filled with the hum of worshippers. I stood at the altar, my hands clasped in prayer, when a shadow fell across the stone. I turned, and there he was, Poseidon, god of the sea, his trident gleaming like a weapon in his hand. He was not supposed to be here. The gods did not often walk among mortals, and when they did, it was never without purpose. "Medusa," he said, his voice like the crash of waves against the shore. "You serve Athena well, but your beauty is wasted in this place. Come with me, and I will make you a queen of the sea." I stepped back, my heart pounding. "I am a servant of Athena, my lord. My place is here." His smile was sharp like the edge of a blade. "Athena is a jealous mistress. She would see you wither away in this temple, your beauty fading like the petals of a flower. I offer you more." I shook my head, my voice steady despite the fear that coiled in my chest. "I am content with my lot, my lord. I ask only to serve." For a moment he said nothing, his eyes narrowing as if he could not believe my refusal. Then his expression darkened, and the air grew heavy with the scent of salt and storm. "You dare defy me," he growled, his voice shaking the ground beneath my feet. "I am Poseidon, lord of the seas, and no mortal refuses me." I stood my ground, though my knees trembled. "I am not yours to command, my lord. My loyalty is to Athena." His laughter was a thunderclap, echoing across the courtyard. "Athena cannot protect you from me, little priestess. You will regret this." And with that he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of brine and the memory of his wrath. That night I dreamed of the sea. It rose in great waves, swallowing the island whole, and I stood alone on the shore, watching as the waters claimed everything I had ever known. When I woke, my pillow was damp with tears, and the air was thick with the scent of salt. I went to the temple at dawn, my heart heavy with foreboding. The worshippers came as they always did, their faces filled with hope and fear, but I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Athena appeared to me that afternoon, her form shimmering like moonlight on water. She stood before me, her gray eyes filled with something I could not name, pity perhaps or regret. "Medusa," she said, her voice soft but firm, "Poseidon seeks to humiliate me through you. He would see you defiled, your purity destroyed, and your loyalty broken. But I will not allow it." I bowed my head, my heart pounding. "What would you have me do, my lady?" She reached out, her hand cool against my cheek. "You have a choice, Medusa. You may remain as you are, a mortal priestess, and face Poseidon's wrath alone. Or you may accept my protection and become something more." I looked up, meeting her gaze. "What do you mean, my lady?" Her expression was unreadable. "I would make you my champion, imbued with power to protect the innocent from the cruelty of the gods. But such power comes with a price. You would no longer be mortal, and your life would no longer be your own." I hesitated, the weight of her words settling over me like a shroud. To become a pawn in the games of the gods was a dangerous thing, but to refuse was to invite Poseidon's wrath. "I will serve you, my lady," I said at last. "Whatever the cost." She nodded, her expression solemn. "Then it is done." And with that she was gone, leaving me alone in the temple, my heart heavy with the knowledge that my life would never be the same. The change came slowly, like the creeping of frost across a window pane. My skin grew cold, my eyes sharp, and my hair, once a cascade of dark curls, became a living thing, writhing and twisting like serpents. I could feel the power within me, a coiled spring waiting to be unleashed, and I knew that I was no longer merely mortal. But with the power came fear. The people of Seriphos, once so eager for my counsel, now looked at me with suspicion and dread. They whispered of curses and monsters, and I could not blame them. I was no longer the girl they had known. And then the rumors began. Poseidon, it seemed, had not forgotten me. He spread tales of a monster in the temple, a creature who turned men to stone with a glance. The people, already wary of my transformation, began to turn against me, and I knew that it was only a matter of time before they came for me. I stood in the temple courtyard one evening, the setting sun casting long shadows across the stone, and I wondered if I had made the right choice. Athena's protection had saved me from Poseidon's wrath, but at what cost? And then I heard the sound of footsteps, and I turned to see a group of men approaching, their faces hard and their eyes filled with fear. They had come for me. I stood my ground, my heart pounding, and I knew that this was only the beginning. The men approached slowly, their footsteps echoing against the temple's marble floor. They were armed, not with swords or spears, but with torches and ropes, their faces twisted with fear and determination. I recognized some of them, fishermen from the village, farmers who had once sought my counsel, and even a blacksmith who had crafted offerings for Athena. Now they looked at me as if I were a beast to be tamed. I stood in the center of the courtyard, my serpent hair writhing softly around my face, and I felt the weight of their stares like a physical force. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to remain calm. I would not let them see my fear. "Medusa," one of them called, his voice shaking. "We've come to end this curse. You've brought nothing but misfortune to Seriphos." I took a step forward, and they flinched as one. "There is no curse," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging within me. "I am no monster. I am still the same priestess who has served this temple for years. Can you not see that?" The blacksmith, a burly man named Thuron, stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "We've seen what you can do. The stories are true. You turn men to stone with a glance. You're not human anymore, Medusa. You're a danger to us all." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "I did not ask for this power. It was given to me to protect you, to shield you from the cruelty of the gods. Can you not understand that?" But they were beyond reason, their fear outweighing any loyalty they might have once felt toward me. Thuron raised his torch, the flame flickering in the dim light of the setting sun. "We're doing this for the good of Seriphos. For our families." I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. When I opened them again, I saw not the men before me, but the faces of those they loved, their wives, their children, their friends. They were not evil, merely afraid. And fear, I had learned, could make even the kindest of hearts cruel. "If you truly believe I am a threat," I said softly, "then do what you must. But know this, I will not fight you. I will not harm you. I am not your enemy." For a moment there was silence. Then Thuron stepped forward, his torch held high. "Bind her," he ordered, his voice trembling. "And cover her eyes. We cannot risk her gaze." They moved quickly, their hands rough as they tied the ropes around my wrists and draped a cloth over my eyes. I did not resist, though every instinct screamed at me to fight back, to use the power Athena had given me to protect myself. But I had made a vow to serve, to protect, to endure, and I would not break it, even if it meant my own destruction. As they led me from the temple, I heard the whispers of the crowd that had gathered outside. They spoke of monsters and curses, of the wrath of the gods and the need to appease them. But beneath their fear, I sensed something else, a flicker of doubt, of guilt. They knew, deep down, that I was not the villain they had made me out to be. I was taken to a cave on the edge of the island, a place where the sea crashed against the rocks with a sound like thunder. They left me there, bound and blindfolded, with only the cold stone beneath me and the distant cries of gulls for company. For days, I sat in the darkness, my mind racing. I thought of Athena, of the choice she had given me, and I wondered if I had made the right decision. I thought of Poseidon, his laughter echoing in my ears, and I cursed him for his cruelty. But most of all, I thought of the people of Seriphos, their faces filled with fear and hatred, and I mourned for the life I had lost. It was on the third day that I heard footsteps approaching. I tensed, expecting more of the same, more accusations, more fear. But the voice that spoke was not one I recognized. "Medusa," it said, soft and melodic. "I have come to help you." I turned my head toward the sound, my heart pounding. "Who are you?" "A friend," the voice replied. "One who understands what it is to be feared, to be hunted." "My name is Uriel." I froze. Uriel, one of the Gorgons, my sisters in myth, though I had never met them. According to the stories, they were monsters, cursed by the gods to live in isolation. But the voice I heard was not monstrous. It was kind, almost gentle. "Why would you help me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you are not what they say you are," Uriel replied. "You are not a monster, Medusa. You are a victim just as I was. And together we can find a way to break free of this fate." I felt the ropes around my wrists loosen, and the blindfold was lifted from my eyes. I blinked in the dim light, my vision adjusting to the sight of the woman before me. She was tall and slender, with hair like flowing water and eyes that glimmered like stars. She was beautiful, but there was a sadness in her gaze that mirrored my own. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice trembling. Uriel smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. "The gods may have cursed us, but they cannot take everything from us. We still have our wits, our strength, our will to survive. And that, Medusa, is more powerful than any curse." She reached out a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it. Her grip was firm, her skin cool against mine. "Come," she said. "There is much to do and little time to waste. The gods may have abandoned us, but we are not without allies. And together, we will find a way to reclaim our lives." As I followed her out of the cave, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. For the first time since my transformation, I did not feel alone. And though the road ahead would be fraught with danger, I knew that I would not face it alone. Uriel led me through the winding paths of the island, her steps sure and silent. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the rocky terrain. The air was thick with the scent of salt and the distant roar of the sea, a constant reminder of Poseidon's presence. I followed her, my heart still heavy with the weight of what had happened, but also with a flicker of hope. For the first time since my transformation, I was not alone. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Uriel glanced back at me, her eyes glimmering like starlight. "To a place where we can be safe, at least for a while. There are others like us, Medusa. Others who have been wronged by the gods and cast aside. Together we can find a way to fight back." I hesitated, my steps faltering. "Fight back? Against the gods? Is that even possible?" She stopped and turned to face me, her expression serious. "It is not about defeating them, Medusa. It is about reclaiming our lives, our freedom. The gods may be powerful, but they are not infallible. They can be challenged, and they can be wrong." Her words stirred something within me, a spark of defiance that I had long suppressed. I thought of Athena, of the choice she had given me, and I wondered if I had truly made the right decision. Had I traded one form of servitude for another? "What if they come for us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What if Poseidon or Athena decides to finish what they started?" Uriel's gaze softened, and she reached out to place a hand on my shoulder. "Then we will face them together. But we cannot live in fear, Medusa. Fear is what they want. It is what gives them power over us." I nodded, though my heart still ached with uncertainty. We continued on, the path growing steeper and more treacherous as we climbed higher into the hills. The sound of the sea faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of an owl. At last, we reached a hidden grotto, its entrance concealed by a curtain of ivy. Uriel pushed aside the vines and gestured for me to follow. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the walls lined with glowing crystals that cast an eerie light. In the center of the grotto stood a small group of figures, their faces shadowed but their eyes gleaming with a fierce determination. They turned as we entered, their gazes settling on me with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "This is Medusa," Uriel announced, her voice echoing in the cavern. "She is one of us now." One of the figures stepped forward, a tall man with broad shoulders and a face marked by scars. "Welcome, Medusa," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I am Perseus, once a hero of the gods, now an outcast like you." I stared at him, my heart pounding. Perseus? The name was familiar, a hero from the tales I had heard as a child. But the man before me was not the proud warrior of legend. He was weary, his eyes filled with a pain that mirrored my own. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling. What happened to you? Perseus sighed, his shoulders slumping. I was betrayed just as you were. I served the gods faithfully, but they used me as a pawn in their games. When I refused to play along, they cast me aside. Another figure stepped forward, a woman with fiery red hair and eyes that burned with anger. I am Andromeda, she said, her voice sharp. I was sacrificed to a sea monster to appease Poseidon, but I survived. Now I seek vengeance against the gods who would see me dead. One by one, the others introduced themselves, each with a story of betrayal and loss. There was Orpheus, the musician who had journeyed to the underworld to save his love, only to lose her again. There was Arachne, the weaver who had been transformed into a spider for daring to challenge Athena. And there was Icarus, the boy who had flown too close to the sun and fallen from grace. As I listened to their stories, I felt a sense of kinship with these outcasts. We were all victims of the gods' cruelty, bound together by our shared pain and our desire for justice. What do we do now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Uriel stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. We fight back, Medusa. Not with swords or spears, but with the truth. The gods rely on fear and ignorance to maintain their power. If we can expose their lies, if we can show the world what they truly are, we can weaken their hold. Perseus nodded, his expression grim. But it will not be easy. The gods will not take kindly to being challenged. They will come for us, and they will not show mercy. I looked around at the faces of my new companions, their eyes filled with a fierce resolve. For the first time since my transformation, I felt a sense of purpose, a glimmer of hope. Then we will face them together, I said, my voice steady. We will not let them control us any longer. Uriel smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. Welcome to the resistance, Medusa. The road ahead will be fraught with danger, but together we can find a way to reclaim our lives. As the others began to discuss their plans, I felt a sense of unease settle over me. The gods were powerful, and they would not take kindly to being challenged. But for the first time, I felt as though I had a choice, a chance to fight back against the fate that had been forced upon me. The night wore on, the grotto filled with the sound of whispered plans and quiet determination. But as I sat among my new companions, I could not shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the gods were already aware of our rebellion. And then, as the first light of dawn began to filter through the ivy, I heard it, a distant rumble like the sound of thunder, but deeper, more menacing. Uriel's eyes widened, and she turned to me, her expression filled with fear. "They're coming," she whispered. "The gods are coming." I stood, my heart pounding, and looked around at the others. Their faces were pale, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling. Uriel's gaze hardened, and she reached out to take my hand. "We fight," she said, her voice steady. "We fight for our lives, for our freedom. And we do not back down." As the rumble grew louder, I felt a surge of adrenaline, a fierce determination to stand my ground. The gods had taken everything from me, but they would not take my will to fight. Together, we stepped out of the grotto and into the light of dawn, ready to face whatever came next. The dawn broke over the horizon, its light spilling across the rocky cliffs and casting long shadows over the grotto's entrance. The air was thick with tension, the distant rumble of the gods' approach growing louder with each passing moment. I stood with Uriel, Perseus, Andromeda, and the others, our small band of outcasts united by a shared purpose. We were no longer victims of the gods' whims. We were warriors, ready to fight for our freedom. "They're close," Uriel whispered, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Poseidon will not come alone. He will bring others, gods, heroes, perhaps even monsters. We must be ready." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The power within me, the gift, or curse, that Athena had bestowed felt like a coiled serpent ready to strike. But I would not use it to harm. Not unless I had no other choice. "We fight for the truth," I said, my voice carrying over the group. "We fight to show the world that the gods are not infallible. That they can be wrong. And we fight for each other." The others nodded, their faces filled with determination. Perseus gripped his sword, his jaw set. Andromeda clenched her fists, her fiery hair catching the light of the rising sun. Orpheus strummed a single note on his lyre, a sound that seemed to echo with the promise of hope. And then they came. The sky darkened as Poseidon emerged from the sea, his trident gleaming like a weapon forged from the depths. Behind him stood Athena, her gray eyes cold and unyielding, and a host of other gods and heroes, their faces filled with anger and disdain. "Medusa," Poseidon's voice boomed, shaking the ground beneath our feet. "You dare defy us? You, a mere mortal, think you can challenge the gods?" I stepped forward, my head held high. "I am no longer a mortal, Poseidon. And I am no longer afraid of you." Athena's gaze locked onto mine, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the cold resolve of a goddess. "You were my champion, Medusa," she said, her voice like the crack of a whip. "I gave you power, and this is how you repay me." "By turning against me?" "I did not turn against you," I replied, my voice steady. "I turned against the cruelty, the injustice. I turned against the fear that you and the others used to control us. I will not be a pawn in your games any longer." Poseidon laughed, a sound like the crashing of waves. "You think you can win? You are nothing but a monster, Medusa. A creature to be hunted and destroyed." "I am not a monster," I said, my voice rising. "I am a victim of your cruelty, just as they are." I gestured to the others behind me. "And we will not be silenced." The gods hesitated, their confidence wavering for the briefest of moments. But then Poseidon raised his trident, and the battle began. The clash was fierce, the air filled with the sounds of clashing steel and roaring waves. Perseus fought with the skill of a seasoned warrior, his sword flashing in the sunlight. Andromeda wielded a spear, her movements swift and precise. Orpheus played his lyre, the music weaving through the chaos like a thread of hope. I stood at the center of it all, my serpent hair writhing around me, my gaze locked on the gods before me. I did not strike first, but when Poseidon lunged at me, his trident aimed at my heart, I had no choice. I met his gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. His eyes widened in shock as the power within me surged, and then he froze, his body turning to stone. The other gods gasped, their confidence shattered. Athena stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Medusa," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You have proven your strength. But this is not the way. If you continue down this path, you will only bring more destruction." I looked at her, my heart heavy with the weight of her words. "Then show me another way," I said. "Show me that the gods can be more than tyrants. Show me that you can change." For a long moment, Athena said nothing. Then she nodded, her gaze softening. "Perhaps you are right," she said. "Perhaps it is time for a new era, one where gods and mortals can coexist, where fear is not the tool we use to maintain order." The other gods murmured among themselves, their anger fading as they considered her words. Poseidon, now a statue, stood as a silent reminder of the consequences of their actions. "We will leave you in peace," Athena said at last. "But know this, Medusa, the world will not forget what you have done. Your story will be told, not as a tale of monsters and curses, but as a tale of courage and defiance. You will be remembered as a hero." I nodded, my heart swelling with a mixture of relief and pride. The gods turned and left, their forms fading into the light of the rising sun. As the grotto fell silent, I turned to the others. Their faces were filled with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We did it," Uriel said, her voice filled with awe. "We stood against the gods and we won." "Not just us," I replied, my gaze sweeping over the group. "All of us. Together." We stood there for a moment, the weight of what we had accomplished settling over us. And then, one by one, we began to make our way back to the world, ready to rebuild our lives and forge a new future.